once again, Morocco is an African country and an important one. And second, we are proud Africans. I think we honored Africa organizing what we organized in the AFCON, and we are very proud.
Morocco isn't just one of the 54 nations in Africa. It's a geopolitical anchor positioned at the continent's most critical intersection.
Yes, it functions as a continental bridgehead to Europe. Yet for some Africans, Morocco remains a neighbor that feels distant and disconnected.
We can't access their market like they will access ours. So they have more benefit into us like we will have into them.
Well, this could be partly true and supported by data because Morocco's trade with Europe stands at over 60%, while with its African countries sits at just about 9%.
Established free trade frameworks, geographical proximity and superior logistics make it easier for Morocco to trade with Europe.
And this raises a fundamental question. Is Morocco's push to become a continental trade hub all about edging out competition?
Once again, we are not in a competition with anyone. We are building, we are taking our own destiny, and we believe in Africa, and we are a trusted partner to the world.
And another important question, is Morocco truly Africa's gateway to the world, or is it a bridge built on its own terms?
That is our conversation today under the Baobab.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mimi Mefoneu. It's always a pleasure to have you with us under the Baobab.
Of course, and my name is Jojo Kachi. A very warm welcome to you all. Here under the Baobab, we make Africa's complex issues personal and relatable.
And we do so every Friday of the week,
Yes.
where we get to speak to policymakers, politicians, and even, we speak to those who matter about the topics that matter also across the African continent. And here is for our listeners, our viewers, we are urging all of you to join the conversation by...
And of course, it's very easy. Of course, you just need to subscribe to DW Africa on YouTube and become part of the growing community.
And the community is growing indeed. We see all your comments, your reactions, your likes, your engagements.
Much
and we
appreciated.
appreciate, of course, Judge, we appreciate that. So, Judge, before trade, before politics, there is the question of identity. You know, when we are talking, before we talk about trade, there's always the question of who are you?
Yes.
Where do you belong? Or, that identity question.
Someone may wonder, where are you driving at?
I'm actually trying to look at, Morocco, because Morocco is occupying a very, very important place within the African continent.
Yes.
It is an African country, but it left the African Union. Of course, we know that Morocco left the African Union in 1984 over the Western Sahara dispute, something that we are going to be talking about, only to return again in 2017.
Yes.
A lot of questions, why and how,
Yeah, of course. And Mimi, they just didn't return to the African Union, to be part of the larger continent and, this particular outfit that represents the continent. But they came back, as a titan. They are leading the way and others are following, literally.
Right. So some of the questions that people will be asking is, where is Morocco's place on the map, particularly African map, and how other African countries seeing Morocco, how do they perceive Morocco? You've described that they are like, they return not just as guests, but as titans.
Yes.
Big when it comes to business, big when it comes to the economy and many things.
Yeah.
But where do they fall, within the African continent? That's also another big question.
Whenever I hear that question, it's as simple as saying they fall on the northern side of, the African map. It's easy to describe it that way, but one would understand. But I want us to hold that thought, Mimi. We will come to it in a bit because we are talking and we are privileged to talk to Riyad Mazur, Morocco's Minister of Industry and Trade, to answer all this and more.
And to note that His Excellency Mazur is actually overseeing Morocco's industrial strategy, including its automotive sector, which now produces hundreds of thousands of vehicles annually.
Yes.
That's a huge responsibility.
Imagine
there.
they're not just producing them, they're producing and selling to Europe. You're selling them into these top, economies. And whenever you walk around and see the Renaults, produced from Morocco being sold to Europe, this is a huge testament that, of course, they're making headways. And it's pushing to renewable energy, logistics, and continental trade.
Right.
Yes, but there is another angle. Why Morocco? That is the question that many people are asking.
Good question, because in 25 years, Morocco has been able to transform its economy, George, and you and I will be looking at some of the things that Morocco has done so far, from agriculture heavy to industrial manufacturing, and also from raw material or raw exports to car and aeronautics and electronics as well.
Yes, and we have over 70% of exports now being manufactured goods.
Right.
That is a very huge, leap in terms of how they're transforming the economy. And perhaps the reason Morocco appears to be doing things differently from other African countries, one would argue.
Yes, but can that Moroccan model be exported? During this interview with His Excellency Mazo, I tried to find out what exactly is Morocco doing differently when it comes to business. Let's find out from him.
Heavy investment have been made under the leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI. First, most important bridge is the port of Tanger Med, which is the biggest port of Africa and the biggest port of the Mediterranean Sea, the fifth best performing port in the world. So we are building bridges, energy bridges with the gas pipeline between Nigeria and Europe. We are building logistic bridges, developing ports all around the Atlantic, and the port at the south of Dakhla, which will be as big as the port of Casablanca. Morocco is the proof of concept, and the Atlantic continuity is under construction.
Now let's talk about Tanger Med, reportedly handling about 11.1 million containers. That was in 2025. Can you give concrete examples of African producers beyond Morocco who have used this infrastructure to scale exports into Europe on better terms?
For sure. Moroccan industry has the biggest advantage because it's in our territory. But the most important thing is that 40 African ports are connected to Tanger Med, and this opens their ability to export to the world. So cacao is exported through Tanger Med. Cotton, African minerals are exported through Tanger Med, and this is open to all our African friends. More than that, this is what we have. Actually, we are commissioning a new port in the Mediterranean end of this year that will have an initial capacity of 5.5 million containers equivalent 20 feet and a theoretical capacity of more than 17 million. So we are building the doors to the world for Africa, and we are integrating in the Mediterranean Sea and in the Atlantic Sea with a comprehensive program based on logistics, based on energy integration, on industrial development, and on food security.
But some analysts argue that Morocco's growing investments and trade partnership across Africa have helped strengthen support for Rabat's position on Western Sahara. Is Morocco's economic expansion in Africa partly about consolidating political backing on that issue?
The Moroccan Sahara issue internationally is on the way of being solved by the support of all reasonable powers, African or international. We are working heavily. It's the right of the Moroccan people to claim part of its territory, and we are working heavily to integrate the Atlantic Africa in order to develop Atlantic Africa, and it's our interest, not our diplomatic interest. We are doing good business also there, not only diplomatic, like you said. We are doing good business in banking. We are doing good business in telecoms, in real estate. But we are doing good business because in Africa you have good business. Investing in Africa is not charity. Investing in Africa has a return on investment, and this is what we try to prove to the world as African investor in Africa.
Of course, I like the line of the questioning, and especially, the question on them returning to the African Union, and him making a statement that, of course, they are doing that because they believe they are Africans. And it brings us to the conversation you started with before, that the identity of Morocco. Yes.
I heard you saying that, okay, when we are thinking about Morocco,
Yes.
We see Morocco in terms of, okay, do they really belong? I mean, within the African continent, or how do they feel, or how are other African countries seeing Morocco? There's always this notion of, out of when someone is very far away from you, there's always that notion of thinking that this person is not, someone that this is not someone that identifies with my values, my identity, and my culture.
Yes.
But when you go closer to the person, you discover that is someone that is just the same like yourself.
Yeah.
I used to also feel that way until we saw how Morocco, hosted the African Cup of Nations, and how everything went well until we had, the
controversial officiating of that particular match. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was just, the political part of it. But looking at how the players were welcomed, people were across the world were welcomed in Morocco.
Just top class. It was a top class organization.
Of course. And also having this conversation with His Excellency also brought me closer to the country that I felt like before was a little bit distant.
Yeah, and one funny thing is whenever we talk, I'm an ardent football fan, maybe. Whenever we talk about, the countries, representing Africa in the, whenever they are continental, rather World Cup, showpieces, one would go like, we have Ghana, we have Senegal, and maybe the others, like Morocco and Tunisia and Algeria, not knowing that these are, also African countries representing, the continent.
Right, our African brothers and sisters. And, it's some sort of, the debate even goes political.
Yes.
We can even question what are our leaders within the continent doing to kind of do like the rapprochement, how a Frenchman would put it, like bring us together for us to understand that we are one people.
Yes.
And that question of identity is what I also put to His Excellency Mezu, to understand where does Morocco stand, in terms of all of these controversies and these questions that have been asked, and particularly its African identity. Let's hear what he had to say.
So first of all, Morocco it was initially the founder of the African Union organization. And we came back because the African Union integrated separatists as a country, and we had this freeze during some period. And we are really in an approach that trusts the African ability to develop by itself. Africa that trusts Africa. So we are in this approach working together as equal partners, not coming with an approach to support only or to give lessons. We know we have a business to do together. We have a growth to develop together based on return on investment, based on being a trusted partner.
But some analysts say that Morocco rejoined the African Union mainly to expand its trade and investment footprint on the continent. How would you respond to this argument?
Once again, Morocco is an African country and an important one. Second, for sure, we believe in Africa and we believe in the ability to grow and for the continent to grow based on its own capabilities and based on its own vision. So we are an integrant part of the continent, and for sure it's our interest to be within the family, support the family to grow, and if the family grows, we are growing with it.
There is also this important debate about whether Morocco truly feels itself as an African country, whether its engagement with Africa is primarily economic or strategic. How do you respond to those who question Morocco's African identity?
Oh, we are a fully African country, geographically, genetically we are Africans, and this could be a surprise for some people, but we are real Africans in terms of genetics. And second, we are proud Africans. I think we honored Africa organizing what we've organized in the AFCON, and we are very proud to show to showcase what Africa is capable to do.
You have just spoken about unity across the continent, yet we often see tensions or disconnect between North Africa, West Africa, East Africa, and even Southern Africa. From your perspective as a policymaker, where does this disconnect come from?
For me, there is absolutely no disconnection, at least in the mind of people that are trying to build unity. So we are promoting under the leadership of our King unity, unity, and unity. Let's people do not try to separate us. This is what people are trying sometimes to do, and it's their interest to separate the continent that has a lot of power, that has skills, that has talent. The last AFCON organization is a shining proof of how it can be successful, working hard. And this is something we are all doing together. We have several countries that are taking this proof of concept and working hardly hand in hand with Morocco to develop new infrastructure. We are very proud in contributing to making our continent shine. Let's our continent continue to shine and to grow. And this is our only purpose under the leadership of our King. And if someone else is trying to create division, let them talk and let us continue to work hard together.
I like it. United we stand, divided we fall. The minister is saying clearly that don't allow people to kind of separate us, and even us under the baobab here. Don't
and even question if Morocco is an African country.
Yes, that they shouldn't do that. But also we have to take this question to our audience out there, our community.
Yes, and we put the question to our community members, and Aminata Sanyang in the Gambia and our correspondent Isaac Kalechi in Ghana asked people whether they see Morocco as truly African or more closely aligned with Europe.
Morocco is part of Africa, but we've also seen Morocco structure its economy and its structure to be able to service mainly Western Europe. I believe that will emerge as a result of the proximity, between Morocco and Western Europe. So as it stands, Gambia imports more from Morocco than it would obviously export. But I believe there is opportunity for countries like the Gambia, which depend on tourism to a great extent, to learn, or exchange experience with Morocco in the tourism sector, because they have long structured themselves to serve a higher end market in tourism.
Countries see themselves first in this day and age that we live in, right? No country is doing anything in order to just uplift another country while their people actually sleep on the floor. So I guess it benefits both Morocco and any other country that they are investing in, just like any other country.
I heard the last time the Moroccans have given Ghana free scholarship to their university, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think they impart a lot in African like that, but I think the little we get from them is okay.
We can't access their market like they will access ours. So they have more benefit into us like we will have into them.
Most of them are here. People come for tourism and those stuff. I think the tourism too is a form of generating money to the country. So if I said it's not good, meaning I don't know what I'm saying.
Of course, the beauty of Under the Baobab is that divergent views and opinion is welcome. And that's why we also invite you, whenever we, bring up such conversations, we need to get your, thought about what we're talking about.
Right.
And it's clear that Morocco is not choosing between Africa and Europe.
Yes, Morocco is choosing Africa, of course. It's very important. And it's positioning itself between both, as a gateway, and more than half of Morocco's exports go to the European Union, as we know, George.
Yes, and that's the dilemma. And you would agree with people who question their identity and closeness with Africa, because 60% of their trade going to Europe. And one would argue because of the proximity with, say, Spain and Portugal, but also countries like, Senegal, Mauritania are close to Morocco. Why don't they trade with Morocco?
the question is, maybe we'll get to ask that question when we are talking to a Mauritanian minister or another person from the other country. But Morocco is, you could hear from the Minister of Trade himself that the country is open, is very, very ready to do business with the other African countries, and is very, its system is very, very open. And at the same time, Morocco has signed multiple, like you are talking about, its proximity, not just with other African countries, but with Europe. It has so far signed trade agreements with the European Union, the United States. We also have Turkey and also the Arab states.
Yes, and Morocco finds it easier to trade with Europe due to combination of, geographical proximity. I will insist on that. Deep-rooted legal frameworks and superior logistics that are currently lacking in, its intra-Africa trade routes.
The trade routes that is always a problem in Africa. There's the idea of, trade should be free. Everything should be open in Africa. But when it comes to trade, is that really happening? The answer is actually no. And it's affecting how, goods and services get to circulate within the
climate
African
of business
continent.
itself as a whole.
It's a big problem. You could hear someone from, was it Ghana, saying that, I don't even, trading with Morocco is very, very difficult. The question is why? Whereas it's not very far, right? It's not like in Europe or in the Americas.
It is in Africa.
It's in Africa. But trade is still a problem. But I had to ask the minister if the volume is too lopsided towards Europe, or are they, trading more with Africa? Let's hear what he told us and why. Is the African Gateway just a clever marketing slogan
that they are
or a strategy? Let's find out.
You can see it the other way out. Morocco is competitive enough to export to mature economies, very sophisticated product, and to bring wealth back to the continent. And this is exactly what we're trying to do and to develop together with our brother and sister countries in the continent. We are opening doors to the world. We are developing a proof of concept, developing manufacturing at a very high scale, competing with world leaders in aeronautics in a very sophisticated programs. This is exactly the purpose of the Atlantic and Sahel Initiative of His Majesty. This is exactly the purpose of the gas pipeline between Nigeria and Europe, a business model that brought the country from an underdeveloped country to an emerging country like Morocco, and we are trying to widen this for other neighbors' countries. This is our interest, sure, but this is also the interest of Africa. And this is a business model that works.
Morocco has multiple trade agreements with partners such as the EU, the United States, Turkey, and the Arab Free Trade. But how many of these arrangements have actually generated meaningful economic returns for African economies?
We have free trade agreement with a market of 3 billion consumers in the world. And during this period, we have attracted many investors and sophisticated our economy. For sure, with some relation partners, we are in deficit, but this is a challenge. And this makes your internal economy better, because when you are in deficit, you're looking consistently on how to make your economy better. You are under stress of innovation, of transformation. You are not in a lazy economy that is protected. 87% of the value of the export of goods of Morocco are manufactured products. The first product to be exported is automotive. The best sold car in Europe is made in Morocco. So this is a transformation of an African country that we are very proud of by investing heavily in infrastructure, by investing heavily in talents. And this is a journey of 25 years under the leadership of His Majesty that we are really proud of, and that builds our step to entering into the small club of emerging countries. And this is exactly what we're trying to expand with the King's Atlantic Initiative to sister and brother countries in Africa.
Yeah, Mimi, I've always argued that having a competitive advantage may, set you apart from other people, even with your brothers. And it's clear that maybe some people may feel the disconnect between, other African nations and Morocco, because they are on their own league. The minister talking about them exporting, quality products to Europe.
I'm just
That's huge.
When I'm listening to him, I'm just thinking about my Cameroonian brothers.
Yes.
And certainly my Kenyan brothers.
Yes,
and
or Uganda.
brothers. And even Nigerians.
Yes.
When they are thinking of importing cars from Europe.
Yes.
Because if you ask in Nigeria now, if you want to import cars, maybe from abroad, which country
People will
would
go
you?
for Germany, of
Belgium,
course, or
maybe
Belgium,
UK,
or France,
America.
Yeah.
But Morocco is just, next door. And they are producing the best vehicles, like he just said.
Yes.
Why is priority not given to another African nation that is doing really good when it comes to automobiles, like the minister is saying,
Yes, when it gets toughened and be a bit intense, what do we normally do here?
What we do under the baobab is we retreat under the shade of wisdom.
Yes.
Where we get to know our guest on a personal level. So who is our guest when he's not talking business, trade, and so on and so forth, and even politics? Who is he, at home and, with friends? Let's get to know him on a personal level. And this is the rapid fire question segment. What was the first job you ever had?
My first job that I ever had, it was when I was a student. I was working in a restaurant.
Would you prefer coffee or Moroccan mint tea?
I love Moroccan mint tea, but I love coffee. I prefer coffee.
If you had to choose between a book and a podcast, which of them would you pick?
Podcast.
Who has been your biggest inspiration in leadership?
King Mohammed VI.
Oh, I knew that because every minister would say their leader.
This is a deep feeling from a long time before politics.
Okay. What is the hardest decision you have ever had to make as a minister?
It's to renounce on some investments because they were not aligned with our strategy.
And if you were not in politics or serving as minister, what career would you have chosen?
Well, entrepreneur.
Between Casablanca and Marrakesh, which city do you enjoy more?
I love Marrakesh, but Casablanca is my city.
The African Cup of Nations or the FIFA World Cup, which do you prefer?
World Cup, because we want an African country finally to win the World Cup.
And which one is harder? Negotiating trade deals or negotiating with your family at home?
Well, it's easier to negotiate trade deals compared to negotiating with the family.
Well, I can't agree more, Mimi.
Anyway, let's move on, George.
Yes, Morocco's push to become a continental trade hub is deeply intertwined with its geopolitical rivalry with Algeria, as both nations use economic statecraft to compete for leadership in Africa and the Sahel.
Exactly, George. And Morocco's, Atlantic initiative isn't just about ports. It's about offering landlocked Sahel nations like Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Chad an alternative to Algeria.
Yes, so when you talk to the minister about this rivalry between Morocco and Algeria, what did he say?
I wanted to understand how it affects security and so on. So this is what he told us.
Well, we don't see it as a competition. We see our neighbor Algeria as a real potential partner, which is part of a conflict. He's supporting separatists and hosting them in its territory. So we hope that we will close under the leadership of the UN and the US. We will close this conflict by the end of this year or in the next few years, so that we can rebuild trust between neighbors. Once again, we are not in a competition with anyone. We are taking our own destiny. These are the words of our King, His Majesty. We are an emerging country, a country that have done an amazing job to build world-class infrastructure, to develop industry, to develop skills, and we want to have stronger neighbors. And we believe in Africa, and we invest in Africa because we believe in Africa, and we are a trusted partner to the world. This is exactly our position. It's not rivalry, it's not competition. It's just making life better for our people.
Yes, making life better for its people. And of course, today we were interrogating, the connection of Morocco to the continent itself and its lead in infrastructure development.
And expanding trade, not just within Africa, but also between Africa and Europe.
Yes, and of course, projecting influence across Africa. But the question remains, Mimi.
Instead of complaining about identity, what can others copy from Morocco's strategic positioning,
Yes, a very pertinent question. And also, is Morocco helping Africa rise or defining the terms of that rise?
And maybe the bigger question is not about Morocco alone, but about Africa itself.
Yes, I can't agree more. And can the continent build together, or will each country build alone?
Thank you for joining us today under the Baobab. Very important questions there, but
Yes.
This is where we come to the end of today's show.
Yes.
I am Mimi Mefoneu.
And my name is Jojo Kachi. Until next time.
Goodbye.